Today I'm going to talk about 8 uses for a Mylar survival blanket for everyday camping. Hey, welcome to Two Camping Gurus. If you like camping in the great outdoors, you are in the right place. So you may wonder why I have so many of these. Well, there's a couple reasons. One, they have a lot of different uses. They're very inexpensive. They don't take up a lot of space, and they're not heavy. So you can, I put these in my my camping bag or a bug out bag. That's not typically used for a bug out bag. My wife and I go camping a lot, and we went a lot with the kids. There's a lot of different uses that you can use these for, and I'm going to run down 8 of them. One, let's say you're tent camping. You need some additional shelter to do some cooking. You can actually set this up, and I'm not going to open these up, but you can set this up between 2 trees, like just a pitched roof type setup in a rainy condition to give you some shelter to do some cooking. You can carry blue tarps and all that type of stuff for that, and we actually have had one that we've used that for, but those are much bulkier. They take up a lot of space. These take up very little space, and if you end up with a rainy situation and you want a little area to do some camp cooking, this is a fantastic way to do that, to set yourself up just a little bit of shelter. Now, another great thing you can use these for, let's say you're out hiking, you're at a campground and you're out hiking somewhere, it starts to rain. If you have these in a small pack, I wouldn't suggest carrying a great big backpack, but if you have these in a small pack, they make fantastic rain gear. You can actually put this in your back pocket, and carry it with you. Throw it over you, you can cut a hole in it, but if you're gonna cut a hole in it, I would recommend that you use some tape or something to put where you're going to cut the hole, because once this stuff is cut and it starts to rip, it will rip pretty fast, pretty easily. But you don't have to. You can just make a hole in it, put it on you like a poncho, or just wrap it on you like a blanket over yourself, and you can get back to your campground without ending up being soaking wet. So again, I know that sounds foolish, but no one wants to get soaking wet. And this is, everyday camping. I'm talking about, you go for a weekend camping trip, and we like to walk out trails and see some, waterfalls and take pictures and stuff like that. So you have one of these in your pocket, especially if you're unsure of the weather. Then, if it starts to rain, you throw this over you. You keep you and your camera equipment dry, which for me is important when I'm out with my camera. So that's another great use, keeping yourself and your gear dry. All right, so let's say you're a tent camper. This is a great ground cloth to help keep any moisture that's in the ground from getting up into your tent. So if you're sleeping on the ground in a sleeping bag or something like that, this is going to help with that. It'll actually help reflect heat back up through as well, but it's going to keep the cold from the ground from coming up. If you go tent camping, take a couple of these, open them up, lay them on the ground before you set your tent up, and they make a great ground barrier. They're not going to protect against sharp rock or stuff or things like that for your tent, and they will rip, or they can rip if a rock pokes through them or something like that. However, if you get your area prepared and you're going to set your tent up, what you normally would do anyways to protect your tent, lay a couple of these down first. You will see a world of difference in comfort as far as keeping the moisture from coming up through the tent, and keeping you a little bit warmer as well. Another thing, if you're out camping, you're trying to, let's say you're boondocking. This is a great one for boondocking. Even if you're in a travel trailer or a tent or something like that, you're doing some little bit of backcountry camping, you can use these to catch rainwater. Get yourself some water that you might need. So you can set it up as a great big tarp type thing and have like a little lower area, gather some rainwater, and then you can fill up your canteen and things like that. And I would, you can use your purification tablets or something like that to purify the water to make sure, whatever, depending on what you're using for. If you're just using for washing, that's fine. But, use it for catching rainwater. You can set it up higher, like a tarp, and have one end low and have like a bucket underneath to gather that rainwater as well. If you're going to be extending your stay at a camp and you're going to have some rainy weather, you can gather quite a bit of rainwater that way as well. So it's just another use for everyday camping that you might want to collect some extra rainwater if you're at a spot that doesn't have access to water. All right, now another great use for these if you are a regular camper, even going off for the weekend, stuff like that, especially if you're a tent camper and you're using a cooler. Use one of these to line your cooler, and it will add quite a bit of time to the ice staying cold, or the stuff staying cold in your cooler and keeping your ice frozen. Just take it, open it up, shove it down in the cooler, pack it around the sides, because it doesn't really fit that shape, but you can tuck it down in there, and then put your stuff in it, wrap it over, close your lid down. It makes a fantastic cooler liner to give you a little bit of that added barrier to keep the stuff cold wrapped up. Now, the other thing is helps with is when if you don't have your cooler full, by putting this in and wrapping the top of this down close to the stuff, there's less air that the ice is trying to keep cool. Now you have that space between this and the cover, but by having this packed down against your food and your ice, it's going to keep your stuff colder longer. And if you're out camping, you have to replace ice. Anything you can do to prolong that ice is well worth giving it a shot. And that does work. It does help a little bit. And it's an inexpensive way to do that, to keep your food colder even longer. Now, another good thing you could use this for if you're out camping is you can, when you set up your campfire or even at a campground that has a fire pit or whatever, you open one of these up on a cool night, but yet you still want to go out and sit by the campfire. Set this up behind the campfire. Put some sticks in the ground, and then one in the middle, and then hook this to one stick, wrap it around that stick, and wrap it around over to the other stick. And what you end up doing, you're creating like a little wall, and the heat, if you're sitting on this side of the fire and that's on the other side, it's going to reflect a lot of that heat right back at you instead of losing it out the other way. So it's a fantastic way, and you can get fairly close to the fire with this. You don't want to get too close because this will melt, but you get fairly close. So then when you're sitting on the other side of the fire and this is on across from you, it's reflecting a lot of that heat back at you, keeping you warmer later at night, especially if you're tent camping and you're just trying to stay warm before you go to bed and curl up in the sleeping bag. This will help reflect a lot of that heat back at you while you have the campfire going. And it's, again, a relatively inexpensive way to keep warm and to use this without having to wrap up in it to stay warm that way, because these things, quite honestly, are not that comfortable. They make a lot of racket and noise, but if you set it up behind the campfire, this will be another way to help keep you warm a little bit longer. Now, the last one to talk about is really kind of really an emergency situation, but if you cut a strip of this stuff off, this stuff is actually very rugged. If you cut a small strip of it, you can use it in a survival situation. If you're trying to stop some bleeding, you need a tourniquet. Now, this is more of an emergency use. Definitely not recommended. You really want a first aid kit, but I know a couple people have talked about using it for that before, and I just throw it in there at the end. Definitely not an everyday use or every camping. Hopefully you never have to deal with a situation like that, but in an emergency situation, you can cut a strip of this off and have a way of of stopping some bleeding, at least to some extent, in a severe situation. Not the best use of it, but it's just one more thing. One more reason to have one packed in your pack with you or in your camper. Have several of them, Again, I got more than this. They're very inexpensive and they take up very little space. But it's a great way to keep yourself warm, gather water, and do several other things that we just talked about. So anyway, I'm going to put a link in the description for picking some of these up on Amazon. Again, they're very inexpensive. Go and take a look around. There's other survival blanket options as well. But more importantly, I want to make sure you are ready to hit the road and have a good time camping. So you also click on the link down there. It's pretripchecklist.gr8.com. That's going to give you a free ebook and a free checklist to make sure you, your tow vehicle, and your camper are ready to hit the road, or at least as best as possible, to help eliminate any of that simple stuff that sometimes we often forget. And so when you head out, you can have a great time. Anyway, thanks for sticking around this long. Please hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit that share button. Make sure you leave a comment in the description. And as always, have a great day and happy camping.